For grain farmers, high-priced corn, when sold as such, improves the bottom line. But cattle producers using corn as an input shoulder the expensive price tag. At the ARDC in Mead this week, we talked with UNL Extension beef feedlot specialist Galen Erickson about the research that could lower costs for feeders.
There's been a lot of interest because we're seeing an increase in grain prices. So there's a lot of interest in what can we do as ways to offset that increased grain. So ironically, we normally use this in feedlot diets as a rough feed source at 5% of the diet. And now we're looking at ways to increase inclusion and make it as competitive as we can to corn.
What can you add to it to make it better?
There's been a lot of work done in the past, particularly back in the 70s, looking at what we call an alkaline treatment of corn stalks. So what we're doing is you take ground corn stalks, you can add about 50% water, 50% dry matter, so you have to add water to it, and then you add these compounds that are alkaline that actually make the fiber in the corn stalks more digestible for the cattle. So we're using a product called calcium oxide. Calcium hydroxide would work as well, but that treatment makes the fiber more digestible as a way to try and compete with corn.
Run those numbers for me again. What percentages are you trying to feed into the diet, and what results are you getting?
What we've done around 5 or 6 times now here at the university's feedlot is we've compared feeding 5% corn stalks, which would be conventional, to 20% treated corn stalks and getting the same performance. So basically you're able to offset 15% of your corn needs in a feedlot, which is quite economical.
Yeah, I would assume the break even has to be quite higher than, or quite lower, I guess, than what you would be normally feeding with high-priced grain.
Yeah, we're estimating, assuming corn stalks are $55 to $60 per ton, we're estimating that when you treat it, you do increase the cost and there's a hassle factor, but you generally can make $20 to $30 more per finished animal, and that and also lower the break even.
How about that hassle factor? What all goes into adding anything you need to these ground corn stalks?
In the 5 experiments that we've done here at the university that was funded by ADM, we've actually done it, I would say, the most complicated way, but the most exact way, and that is we grind the corn stalks through a 3-inch grind, which is important. We weigh those stalks into our feed truck. We weigh out the water that goes into it. We knew how much water was in the corn stalks to begin with, and then we add this calcium oxide powder, mix it all up. Now, you wouldn't have to store it anaerobically, but we've been storing it anaerobically because we don't feed it fast enough. And so if you're going to let it sit for more than 2 weeks, it can start to spoil. But if you're going to feed it within a couple weeks, then there's no problem without storing it. You've got to let it sit for 5 to 7 days before you feed it, because that allows that reaction to occur. Now, commercially though, people don't do that. They do that a few times and then they realize they want to try something different. And so we've had lots of ingenuity across the state and in the Midwest here on how to do that more effectively commercially. And so people have been looking at adapting their grinding equipment to where it can add the water and the calcium oxide right at the same time.
And you mentioned you're also feeding with distillers as well, trying to mix that in?
Yeah, one of the things that's really different now and makes this, we think, even more competitive is the feeding it in combination with distillers grains today. Is probably one of the reasons we can feed 20% treated stalks compared to 5% untreated stalks and get the same performance. So we believe that having 30 to 40% of the diet dry matter as distillers grains is a key.
If you're interested in learning more about this UNL study, the ARDC is holding a meeting on June 20th to show the economics, research data, and process of feeding residues. The meeting will also cover feeding corn silage and oil removal in distillers grains. More information on the meeting is available online at beef.unl.edu.